Picture the sprawling, sun-drenched estates of Montecito, where gates of heavy wrought iron are meant to keep the prying eyes of the world out, but instead they seem to have locked a spiralling, suffocating nightmare in. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, built an entire global brand on the glittering, carefully rehearsed promise of compassion in action. She painted herself as the ultimate modern empathetic leader, a woman who bravely escaped the archaic, allegedly toxic corridors of Buckingham Palace to forge a progressive billion-dollar utopia in the Golden Hills of California. But the pristine facade is violently cracking, and the soft-focus mask of absolute serenity has slipped to reveal a staggering, chaotic reality. Behind the meticulously curated PR releases and the hollow buzzwords lies a foundation in absolute ruins. Her top executives are currently fleeing the palatial Archewell headquarters like desperate survivors escaping a rapidly sinking ship, leaving behind a trail of whispers, frantic midnight departures, and a deeply fractured corporate culture that Hollywood is only just beginning to dissect. Before we pull back the heavy velvet curtain on the insider reports and exclusive theories that completely expose the terrifying collapse of the Archewell empire, I need you to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel immediately. We are actively bringing you the darkest, most closely guarded secrets of the royal exiles, diving into the hidden truth that the mainstream media is too afraid to touch, and you absolutely do not want to miss the shocking revelations we uncover next.
The mass exodus from Archewell is not merely a string of unfortunate professional resignations. It is a desperate, coordinated evacuation by seasoned professionals who have peered into the abyss of a fundamentally broken leadership structure. The irony is as thick as the Pacific fog rolling into Santa Barbara. The Sussexes dramatically detonated their royal lives, throwing the entire British monarchy into chaos under the self-righteous banner of escaping a toxic work environment, promising to build a progressive sanctuary where mental health and emotional intelligence would reign supreme. Yet, their own organization now boasts a staggeringly high staff turnover rate that has left industry veterans utterly speechless. The trap has snapped shut on the Duchess. Key loyalists, the very people who stood as the foundational pillars of her post-royal reinvention, are walking out the door in a silent, damning procession. Most glaring is the catastrophic departure of James Holt, Archewell's co-executive director, a man who had been the ultimate Sussex loyalist since the incredibly turbulent days of 2018. Holt weathered the Megxit storm, the Oprah fallout, and the relentless media scrutiny, only to finally reach his breaking point behind the closed doors of a seemingly unmanageable Montecito boardroom. Following Holt into the professional lifeboat was their chief communications officer, Meredith Maines, a heavyweight PR operative who quietly quit after enduring less than a year in the Sussex pressure cooker. Insider reports are now furiously swirling through the highest echelons of Hollywood, painting a chilling portrait of what truly caused these veteran executives to cut their losses. Exclusive theories suggest that these departures were not the result of polite disagreements over strategy, but rather the explosive culmination of an unbearable, micromanaged reality where emotional volatility dictated every single business decision. Whispers from the deep interior of the entertainment industry claim that there are entirely hidden, ironclad non-disclosure agreements currently being fiercely contested by former staff members, who were allegedly pushed to the absolute brink of psychological exhaustion. This creates a devastating credibility dilemma for Meghan, a lethal double bind from which there is seemingly no escape. She steps into the blinding flashbulbs at orchestrated charity events, branding herself as a beacon of modern, empathetic leadership, lecturing the masses on kindness and community. But back in the shadows of her sprawling estate, royal experts and Hollywood insiders alike are now openly citing her entire operation as a profoundly dysfunctional situation, run by a woman who is unmanageably high maintenance. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. The very woman demanding a softer, gentler world is allegedly ruling her own corporate empire with an iron, uncompromising, and erratic fist. The escalating stakes are no longer just about public perception. They have triggered a massive financial and professional avalanche. Hollywood is watching this executive exodus with cold, calculating eyes. In an industry built entirely on relationships, leverage, and the ability to execute massive projects, the absolute inability to keep a veteran staff member like James Holt sends a glaring neon warning sign to every major studio and streaming platform. It signals that Archewell is a deeply unstable, radioactive investment. Exclusive industry theories point to secret, unannounced investors quietly pulling their backing at the 11th hour, utterly terrified by the internal chaos bleeding out from the Archewell offices. Reports detail closed-door pitch meetings where major studio executives walked out, allegedly citing a totally impenetrable wall of ego and a bizarre refusal to accept standard industry guidance. This is the knockout blow that no amount of slick, high-end PR can spin. While Meghan frantically tries to pivot, marketing an upscale, Martha Stewart-esque lifestyle brand, complete with artisanal jams and curated homeware, insiders report a much darker reality unfolding behind the gates. The Whisper Network claims she is currently operating in full, terrifying meltdown mode. She is reportedly watching her carefully constructed billion-dollar Hollywood empire crumble to ash before her eyes. Yet, instead of deep introspection, she is allegedly trapped in a vicious cycle of blaming her exhausted staff, the unforgiving media, and, increasingly, her own husband. The behavioral flaw at the dead center of this spectacular collapse is a character study in relentless, suffocating micromanagement fueled by an out-of-control ego. Meghan's absolute refusal to heed the advice of competent, seasoned professionals is systematically dooming every single venture before it even gets off the ground. According to explosive theories from former associates, she demands absolute, unquestioning compliance, allegedly firing off demanding, contradictory emails at 4 in the morning, only to completely change the entire scope of a project by noon. She refuses to delegate, yet simultaneously blames those around her when her impossibly shifting standards are not met. This catastrophic failure of emotional appeal exposes a breathtaking inauthenticity. She pushes a serene, sun-dappled, perfectly curated aesthetic to the public, a faux royal domestic goddess gliding through a flawless life. But behind the scenes, the reality is a graveyard of abandoned projects, terrified assistants, and mounting PR disasters that are hastily swept under an ever-growing rug. It is a thematic hypocrisy that strikes at the very core of her brand's moral foundation. She publicly demands absolute loyalty, preaching the gospel of female empowerment and mental well-being, while allegedly leaving a vast, hidden trail of stressed, physically sick with worry assistants spanning all the way back to the deeply troubled days at Kensington Palace. Dossiers reportedly compiled by former palace aides, now quietly circulating among elite Hollywood crisis managers, suggest that the behavioral patterns that caused the initial royal rift were never left behind in London. They were simply exported to California and amplified by a sudden injection of massive, unchecked corporate wealth. And in the center of this swirling vortex of professional and emotional collapse sits a profound, chilling isolation. Prince Harry, the man who blew up his entire universe to protect her, has reportedly begun a massive professional divergence. Exclusive insider theories suggest a silent, growing chasm between the Duke and Duchess, as Harry desperately funnels his remaining energy and focus entirely into his Invictus Games, actively seeking out his own independent validation away from the toxic fallout of the Archewell brand. Rumors claim he is spending increasingly more time completely isolated with his own separate advisory team, sleeping in a separate wing of the Montecito mansion, leaving Meghan entirely alone to white-knuckle her way through her crumbling Hollywood presence. He is securing his own legacy, leaving her isolated on a shrinking, burning island of her own making. This is the absolute point of no return. The grand Hollywood experiment has paralyzed itself from the inside out. Without top-tier, industry-respected talent willing to navigate her volatile demands and shield her from her own worst instincts, Meghan's commercial ventures are completely stalled. She stands on the edge of the precipice, a woman who is globally recognizable, endlessly photographed, yet within the power corridors of the entertainment industry, completely and utterly unhireable. The empire of compassion has shattered, leaving only the sharp, jagged edges of a hollow brand, and as the executives continue to flee into the California night, the Duchess is left to reign over a kingdom of absolute, deafening silence. The silence echoing through the cavernous, vaulted ceilings of the Montecito estate is no longer the sound of peaceful seclusion. It is the heavy, suffocating quiet of a regime in absolute freefall. The California sun may beat down on the meticulously manicured lawns and the shimmering infinity pool, but inside those thick, fortified walls, the atmosphere is reportedly thick with visceral paranoia and mounting dread. Insider reports are bleeding out of the tight-knit enclave of Santa Barbara, suggesting that the interior of the mansion has been transformed into a psychological war room where shadows are treated as enemies and every ringing phone is viewed as a potential new catastrophe. The Archewell exodus was not a quiet shuffling of the deck. It was a violent hemorrhage of talent that has left Meghan entirely exposed to the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of a Hollywood machine that has finally stopped returning her calls. Exclusive theories whispered among elite entertainment lawyers and crisis PR fixers paint a harrowing picture of what truly transpires after the heavy wooden doors slam shut. They speak of a gilded cage where the air conditioning is perpetually set to freezing, matching the allegedly icy, volatile temperament of a duchess completely detached from the reality of her own collapsing empire. The polished, compassionate public image she so fiercely projects is, according to these explosive rumors, a desperate, hollow shell masking a daily routine of frantic pacing, slammed doors, and a relentless barrage of impossible demands hurled at a rapidly shrinking pool of terrified junior-level assistants who are too inexperienced to know they are being led directly into a professional slaughterhouse. To understand the sheer magnitude of this corporate catastrophe, one must look at the deeply hidden mechanics of how the Hollywood power structure has quietly orchestrated a total blackout of Archewell Productions. The industry is notoriously forgiving of bad behavior if it yields massive profits, but Meghan's fatal flaw is that she has become a financial black hole. Exclusive theories currently dominating the private dining rooms of Beverly Hills suggest that major talent agencies, including WME, are actively engaged in highly classified damage limitation strategies, desperately trying to figure out how to slowly distance themselves from her toxic aura without triggering a public, messy war of words. Reports detail phantom pitch meetings, orchestrated illusions where streaming executives flash bright plastic smiles, sip sparkling water, and nod enthusiastically at Meghan's sprawling, incoherent visions for animated series and romantic comedies, only to toss the proposals directly into the shredder the absolute second she steps out of the boardroom. The verdict has allegedly been handed down from the invisible overlords of the entertainment industry. The Duchess is a pariah, a radioactive entity who demands the budget and creative control of a Steven Spielberg while delivering the chaotic, disjointed output of an amateur. Without veteran operators like James Holt to act as human shields, translating her manic, shifting directives into digestible corporate speak, Meghan is suddenly forced to interface directly with ruthless studio heads who possess zero patience for royal grandstanding. The result is an alleged masterclass in self-destruction, with insiders claiming she has single-handedly detonated multi-million-dollar distribution deals by throwing ego-driven tantrums over font sizes, color palettes, and entirely imagined slights, completely oblivious to the fact that the executives she is screaming at hold the absolute power to erase her from the cultural map. This horrifying lack of self-awareness has triggered a secondary crisis that threatens to bankrupt the Sussex brand entirely. While the world watches the glittering, faux regal appearances, exclusive theories suggest a terrifying financial reality is quietly closing in on the Montecito compound. The multi-million-dollar overhead of maintaining their sprawling, security-heavy lifestyle requires a continuous, massive influx of capital that is suddenly drying up. Insider reports claim that an entire syndicate of silent, high-net-worth investors who initially bought into the post-royal hype expecting premium access and lucrative returns are now violently pulling their backing. These phantom benefactors have allegedly been spooked by the mass exodus of the Archewell C-suite, realizing that if the very architects of the brand are jumping ship, the hull must be fatally breached. Rumors are circulating of chaotic midnight video calls where Meghan, stripped of her usual composed veneer, is allegedly reduced to begging for financial extensions from cold, calculating billionaires who only view her as a rapidly depreciating asset. The desperate pivot to a luxury lifestyle brand, the artisanal jams, the curated linens, the desperate attempt to morph into a modern-day Martha Stewart, is reportedly a frantic 11th-hour smokescreen designed to generate quick cash and project an illusion of thriving commerce. But behind the scenes, theories reveal a rotting, hollow core. Insiders claim the much-hyped lifestyle launch is an unmitigated operational disaster, plagued by unpaid vendors, completely disorganized supply chains, and a terrifyingly high return rate fueled by substandard, hastily slapped-together products. The narrative of the serene domestic goddess is violently contradicted by reports of the Duchess allegedly hurling jars of prototype preserves across her pristine, chef-grade kitchen in fits of unhinged frustration, blaming her exhausted, sleep-deprived staff for the public's overwhelming apathy toward her overpriced wares. The psychological toll this relentless failure is extracting from the remaining staff is reportedly reaching a deeply disturbing climax. We are not just talking about long hours and stressful deadlines. Exclusive theories suggest we are witnessing the systematic psychological dismantling of human beings. Reports from former aides who have managed to escape the Archewell compound describe an environment of total, suffocating surveillance, where employees are allegedly pitted against one another in a sick, Machiavellian game for the Duchess's fleeting approval. There are whispered accounts of staff members being subjected to hours-long, emotionally abusive dressing downs over microscopic infractions, only to be love-bombed the very next day with extravagant gifts and manipulative, tearful apologies designed to trap them in a trauma bond. This is the dark, rotting underbelly of compassion in action. Rumors point to highly aggressive legal teams operating in the shadows, weaponizing ironclad non-disclosure agreements to terrorize fleeing executives into absolute silence, threatening them with total financial ruin if they ever dare to speak the truth about the Montecito nightmare. These exclusive theories suggest that the staggering turnover rate is heavily padded by massive, secret severance payouts, hush money violently extracted from an ever-dwindling reserve of capital to keep the terrifying reality of Meghan's workplace tyranny out of the unforgiving glare of the tabloid press. Yet perhaps the most chilling aspect of this escalating catastrophe is the profound, chilling isolation that is rapidly enveloping her, most notably from the one person who sacrificed his entire birthright to bring her Hollywood dreams to life. Prince Harry is vanishing. The narrative of the united, unbreakable Sussex front is, according to explosive reports, completely dead and buried behind the gates of their estate. Exclusive insider theories claim that a cold, brutal pragmatism has finally taken root in the Duke's mind, fueled by the urgent, hushed advice of his few remaining British confidants who have survived the Montecito purge. These phantom advisors are reportedly begging Harry to legally and financially amputate himself from the Archewell wreckage before the entire structure implodes and takes him down with it. Rumors paint a haunting picture of two entirely separate lives being lived under one massive, echoing roof. Harry has allegedly retreated into his own isolated wing of the mansion, communicating with his wife strictly through formal intermediaries and scheduled calendar invites. He is pouring every ounce of his remaining influence into the Invictus Games, desperately building a firewall around his own legacy, ensuring that his charitable endeavors remain untainted by the radioactive fallout of his wife's catastrophic business failures. This deep structural fracture is sending shockwaves through the remaining support network. Insider reports suggest that Harry's independent team is actively blocking Meghan from attending critical Invictus strategy meetings, terrified that her uncontrollable need to center herself in every narrative will alienate the high-level military and government officials necessary for the game's survival. The psychological impact of this banishment on Meghan is reportedly catastrophic. Exclusive theories claim she is spiraling into a deep, vindictive paranoia, completely unable to comprehend a reality where she is not the central, shining protagonist of every room she enters. Stripped of her executive team, frozen out by Hollywood's power brokers, and increasingly abandoned by her own husband, she is left wandering the vast, empty halls of her gilded California fortress, a queen without a kingdom, furiously drafting grand, impossible plans that no one is left to execute. The empire of empathy has been violently exposed as a theater of cruelty, and as the whispers grow louder and the isolation deepens, the Duchess is hurtling toward an inevitable, devastating collapse that no amount of PR spin, no amount of fake paparazzi walks, and no amount of forced, manic smiles can possibly stop. The trap has closed, the loyalists have fled, and the final, crushing reality is finally breaking down the gates. The walls of the Montecito fortress are not just closing in. According to the most explosive insider reports tearing through the highest echelons of crisis management firms, they are collapsing entirely under the crushing weight of impending legal annihilation. We are no longer merely looking at high turnover rates or bruised Hollywood egos. We are witnessing the terrifying final stages of a total corporate apocalypse. Exclusive theories currently being fiercely debated behind the locked doors of Beverly Hills' most ruthless law firms suggest that the very foundation of the Archewell empire is about to be violently ripped apart by a coordinated, devastating legal siege. The ironclad non-disclosure agreements, once wielded as absolute, terrifying weapons of silence by the Duchess, are reportedly cracking under the immense pressure of collective trauma. Rumors claim that a shadow coalition of former Archewell executives, traumatized assistants, and completely disillusioned PR operatives have secretly banded together, quietly consulting with heavyweight whistleblower attorneys who specialize in dismantling abusive corporate environments. These exclusive theories paint a chilling picture of massive, heavily redacted dossiers being compiled in the dead of night, documenting every alleged screaming match, every impossible 3 a.m. demand, and every vindictive professional threat ever hurled across the gleaming marble countertops of the Sussex estate. The velvet-draped guillotine is reportedly being hoisted, and Hollywood is simply holding its breath, waiting for the blade to drop. This impending legal nightmare is exactly why the entertainment industry has initiated a complete, scorched earth blackout of Meghan Markle. The cinematic reality of her current isolation is far darker than any canceled streaming series or failed podcast. Insider reports detail a staggering, unprecedented freeze-out orchestrated by the absolute apex predators of the agency world. The elite power brokers who once tripped over themselves to secure the Sussex signature have allegedly enacted a silent, unbreakable quarantine. Exclusive theories suggest that internal, heavily guarded memos have been circulated across major studios, explicitly flagging any project involving the Duchess as an uninsurable liability. The narrative of the progressive, compassionate, creative powerhouse has been violently replaced by reports of a toxic, uncontrollable diva who treats multi-million-dollar development budgets as her own personal, bottomless vanity funds. Insiders whisper of highly confidential emergency meetings where streaming executives frantically crunch numbers, allegedly realizing that buying out the remainder of Meghan's contracts and simply swallowing the massive financial loss is exponentially cheaper than attempting to produce another unwatchable, micromanaged disaster. She is no longer just a difficult talent. According to these explosive rumors, she has become a financial contagion, a walking PR plague that no amount of A-list intervention can cure. As the professional walls completely disintegrate, the deeply hidden mechanics of her crumbling domestic reality provide a masterclass in psychological horror. Prince Harry, the exiled royal who shattered his own global legacy to fund this California dream, is reportedly executing a chilling, surgical extraction from the Archewell wreckage. Exclusive theories dominating the clandestine chatter of British expatriates in Los Angeles claim that the Duke has secretly retained a fiercely independent team of forensic accountants and London-based litigators, operating entirely outside the purview of the Montecito estate. These insider reports suggest a terrifying level of internal espionage, with Harry's phantom advisors allegedly auditing the massive, hemorrhaging expenditures of Meghan's failed lifestyle brand, desperately attempting to legally ring-fence his remaining inherited wealth before the entire empire declares absolute bankruptcy. The physical distance between the couple is reportedly matching this massive financial chasm. Rumors describe the sweeping Ocean View mansion as a terrifyingly silent architectural prison, divided by invisible, heavily guarded borders. Harry is said to vanish for days on end, locking himself away in high-tech, soundproofed home offices, furiously coordinating international Invictus Games strategies, while allegedly instructing his security detail to intercept and screen all communication from his own wife. He is building a massive, impenetrable firewall, leaving Meghan entirely trapped in the agonizing, suffocating vacuum of her own making. This profound, absolute isolation is pushing the Duchess into what exclusive theories describe as a terrifying, manic spiral of unhinged commercial desperation. Her heavily publicized, faux rustic lifestyle brand is, according to insider reports, nothing more than a spectacular, rotting illusion. Behind the perfectly filtered Instagram aesthetics and the carefully staged, sun-dappled photographs of artisanal lemon jam lies an alleged logistical bloodbath. Rumors paint a chaotic scene of vast, undisclosed warehouses packed to the ceiling with defective merchandise, rotting produce, and completely unsellable homeware, all abandoned by furious supply chain managers who have allegedly refused to work with a leader incapable of making a single, coherent business decision. Insiders claim that in her desperate, blinding fury to prove her commercial viability, Meghan has resorted to terrifyingly volatile dictatorial tactics, allegedly demanding that her few remaining shell-shocked junior staffers physically hand-deliver these substandard products to highly influential celebrities who have secretly begged their own assistants to throw the unsolicited gifts directly into the trash. The staggering humiliation of this absolute, unmitigated rejection is reportedly tearing through the Montecito estate like a hurricane, resulting in accounts of shattered porcelain, hysterical midnight phone calls to dead numbers, and a duchess utterly consumed by the terrifying realization that her global social currency has completely flatlined. The ultimate, devastating irony of this entire saga is the absolute shattering of the compassion in action brand. Meghan Markle fled the gilded, historic cages of the British monarchy, claiming she was suffocating under the weight of archaic rules, toxic hierarchy, and relentless institutional cruelty. She demanded a new world, a progressive utopia built entirely on her own image of absolute empathy and moral superiority. Yet, exclusive theories and insider reports reveal that she has simply rebuilt the exact same nightmare on the California coast. Only this time, she is the sole, absolute tyrant of a crumbling, hollow kingdom. The trail of broken executives, traumatized assistants, and alienated allies stretches out behind her like a massive, undeniable graveyard of her own hubris. She demanded complete, unwavering loyalty, yet allegedly treated her staff as highly disposable, emotional punching bags. She demanded privacy, yet monetized every single breath of her victimhood until the public completely gagged on the hypocrisy. The whispers radiating from the darkest corners of Hollywood all point to one single, inescapable conclusion. The Archewell exodus is not a temporary setback. It is the final, fatal heartbeat of a thoroughly toxic brand. Without top-tier talent willing to navigate her impossible, ego-driven demands, without a husband willing to blindly shield her from the brutal consequences of her own actions, and without an industry willing to fund her delusions of grandeur, Meghan Markle is completely paralyzed. She is left to wander the vast, echoing halls of her California fortress, endlessly scrolling through the devastating headlines, completely and utterly unhireable. The heavy wrought iron gates of Montecito, meant to keep the adoring public out, have finally slammed shut, locking a furious, isolated duchess inside an empire of absolute, terrifying silence, leaving her globally recognizable, infinitely wealthy, but entirely alone in the dark. If you are as captivated and utterly chilled by these explosive insider reports and exclusive theories as we are, you need to act right now. Hit that like button, leave a comment below telling us exactly what you think about this unprecedented Hollywood collapse, and subscribe to the channel immediately. Turn on all notifications so you never miss an update, because the royal exile narrative is unraveling faster than anyone could have ever predicted, and we will be right here, aggressively pulling back the curtain on the dark, heavily guarded secrets the mainstream media is absolutely terrified to show you. Stay tuned, because the next massive revelation is already loading, and you will not believe what we have uncovered.